Good morning and afternoon to you all. First of all, on behalf of the glamorous women of Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated, we would like to welcome you all to our July Advocacy and Awareness Zoom event. We want to personally thank you in advance for logging on and spending time with us today on this Saturday. We hope that everyone is feeling well and doing the very best that they possibly can. And now it brings me great pleasure to present to you our president and founder of Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated, the general, a 10-year lupus survivor, president, founder of GPRLSI, president of the nonprofit organization Colors of Lupus Nevada, and owner of, Crafty 7 Creations. She is a dedicated and incredible wife, a remarkable mother, a devoted grandmother, dearest friend, and outstanding sister to us all. This phenomenal woman shows us strength, courage, compassion, and love in all that she does. Not only does she live her life with lupus, but manages to still work a full-time job, run 2 organizations, and is the right hand to her athletic family with coaching the South Boys and being present during the basketball season. This entrepreneur stays creating for her online business, Crafty 7. Looking at her, you can say, oh, this woman does it all, even when she's not physically at her best. But it's so gratifying to her, and it keeps her busy and not focusing on having lupus. Without further ado, our president, Madam President, Mrs. Autumn Austin.
Wow, I have never, ever been introduced that way. Chandra, you just put a smile on my face. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's still morning here in Las Vegas. I see that we have some of our sorors on the line, but we have some new faces or names that I see. I see a Shanji, a Janice. I see somebody that doesn't have a telephone number. Just has a telephone number, but I want to welcome you all today to Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated and Colors of Lupus Nevada's monthly educational session. Again, Chandra, thank you for scheduling this, and thank you for introducing me. I want to give you guys just a little bit. I know Chandra gave you a little bit of history about me, but let me tell you a little bit about the lupus me. It'll be 10 years. Santa Claus brought me lupus for Christmas. I got diagnosed December 24th, 2012, after a long 3-year process. It took them 3 years to diagnose me. I had some really weird symptoms. And as I talked to more people with lupus, I find out that it's not as weird as I thought it was. I was having these episodes that they call syncope episodes. And I don't know if you guys know what syncope episodes are, but they are episodes where you just pass out. So I was passing out for absolutely no reason. Now, the first time I passed out, I thought I had just indulged a little bit too much in alcohol. I was at a bar. We were celebrating, my friends and I, and I just thought I missed the step. You know, I thought that I missed the stool, and I just passed out because I was just too drunk. Well, those situations kept happening more often than not, where I became a running joke at my job. If anybody saw the ambulance parked outside, they were like, oh, they're there for Autumn. Well, absolutely, they were there for me. And so after about I think it was like 6 times I passed out. One time I passed out at work, and I was rushed to the hospital, and I was kept in the hospital for a week. And that began my journey of me being in the hospital for a week, at least once a year. Like I'm known to be in the hospital for at least a week, once a year. But they ran every test known to man, and they couldn't figure out what it was. So my primary care doctor, she's like, I'm just going to run every blood test that you could possibly run. And so she ran an autoimmune panel, and it came back positive for lupus. And then when I went through all the testing, because they felt like it was neurological, they felt like it was ear, nose, and throat related, things like that. So the neurologist came back. They never sent me to a rheumatologist. They sent me to a neurologist. They sent me to an ear, nose, and throat specialist, where they determined that I had the highest form of vertigo you could have, which is oscillopia. So I was sent to a balance therapy place, where most of the time it's older people that have lost their hearing. They have to get their equilibrium on track. And so I was going to balance therapy 3 days a week for 3 months. I was out of work for 3 months, and they ran my ANA again. They ran my autoimmune panel, and that time it came back negative. So me not knowing, and this is something I'm going to talk about more in depth, me not knowing that I have to be more involved in my healthcare and not just take this for a resolution or just take medication just because they said. I just was like, okay, I just have oscillopia. I just got to go to this balance therapy. I'm not going to pass out anymore. So I got tired of going to the doctors, because they say, you know what, you don't have lupus. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't know what lupus was. I didn't even research it then at the time when they were trying to diagnose me with it initially. So for me, I just got tired. And I don't know how many of you guys get tired, but I just got tired of going to the doctor. I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm going back to work, and I'll just deal with this oscillopia. And for a while, it subsided. I stopped passing out. The balance therapy worked. And then in beginning of 2012, it started happening again. And they tested me, and I was positive. And this time, when they tested me a second time, they sent me to a rheumatologist, and I got the diagnosis. For me, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you guys is how I got to where I am today. My full-time job is I am a senior clinical research coordinator for innovative health research. So what does that mean? I run clinical trials for autoimmune diseases, specifically rheumatological autoimmune diseases, specifically lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. Every once in a while, I'll do an osteoarthritis or a psoriatic arthritis, but my forte is lupus. When I got diagnosed by one rheumatologist, and he pretty much treats all lupus patients as the same. And we all know we're not all the same. No two lupus cases are alike. We have similar symptoms, we have similar flares, we have similar triggers, but not all of us are alike. But this is all he did. He didn't look at me. He couldn't tell you what I look like. He gave me the same prescription that he gives all of his lupus patients. So he gave me 35 milligrams of prednisone a day. Not just when I was in flare. He told me I needed to take 35 milligrams of prednisone a day. In turn, I gained 60 pounds in 6 months because of that. He gave me hydroxychloroquine, and because of my weight at the time, I had to take 200 milligrams twice a day. And I don't know if you guys know that hydroxychloroquine is based on your weight. Either you take 1 pill or you take 2 pills, depending on if you're over or under 150 pounds. And then he gave me anxiety medication. And I forgot the name of it, but he said that all lupus patients suffer from anxiety. And me not knowing, I'm like, okay, all lupus patients suffer from anxiety. So I started taking that medication, and it caused me to hallucinate. It caused me to think I was covered in spiders. So I immediately stopped taking that medication. But I continued the prednisone, I continued the hydroxychloroquine, and I continued the lab work every 3 months, and he wanted to see me every 3 months. Well, after 6 months of seeing him, I had to miss an appointment because my job wouldn't allow me to leave. And I called to reschedule, and they're like, well, you can't get in for another 3 months. Well, I need my prescriptions, right? I gotta survive. I gotta live this thing. I need my prescriptions. Well, you can't get your prescriptions until you see the doctor. Well, how does that happen if you can't get me in for 3 months? So I was hysterical. I was crying. I usually don't listen to the radio much, like the regular radio. But just that day, I'm just going to say it was God. I happened to be listening to the radio, and I heard I apologize if you guys hear my dog barking in the background. I heard my now boss on the radio. He was doing a radio show called Health, Wellness, and You, which is the radio show that I currently host when I'm on the radio. And he was talking about participating in clinical trials for lupus. So I called and I got an appointment, and lo and behold, I became a participant in a clinical trial for lupus. It did not get passed by the FDA. There's a lot of things that when you participate in a clinical trial, it's very extensive. They test you, your blood work is tested depending on how many times you come a month. It could be 2 times, it could be 1 time. It could be every other month, whatever the protocol calls for. But for that particular study, I was coming in every month. So they were testing my blood levels for everything that you can imagine, not just lupus levels, but your regular white blood cell count, your kidney functions, your cholesterol, your hemoglobin A1C. When you participate in a clinical trial, it's very extensive, and your appointments are more detail oriented in your regular doctor's appointments. So that's something I'll touch on more. But I was a participant in that study for a year and a half. Again, it wasn't approved by the FDA, but because when you are in a clinical trial, you spend a great deal of time with that staff. You get to know them on a personal level. He got to know me on a personal level. He got to know my background. And when he found out that my 9-year job had eliminated my position, he offered me a position to come work for him because I have a marketing background. So he wanted me to be his marketing and recruiting person. And so 8 years, we fast forward to 8 years. I am now a senior clinical research coordinator, and I run his trials. I'll tell you guys, we tend to think that we're lab rats when we participate in these trials, but being a participant, they call you subjects, but I call you patients. I don't use the word subjects because that intensifies you feeling like you're a lab rat, right? But that was the best decision I could have made ever in life. Not just because I got a job, but because it helped me learn more about my disease. It allowed me to ask questions that I didn't know. It allowed me to learn why certain medications are used. It allowed me to help get Benlysta approved because we were the high enroller. It was approved, but they were going to withdraw the approval because at one point they thought that it didn't work in African Americans. So my site participated in the trial for Benlysta to work, to be just for African Americans, and they saw a high success rate. So then it was approved further, and then it was approved for lupus nephritis, and then it was approved for children. So I am happy to know that I participated in that. But it allowed me to learn how to be more actively involved in my healthcare. I'm not going to take this medication just because you prescribed it to me. I'm going to ask questions. I'm not going to just take hydroxychloroquine. I had a patient who had another doctor that, another rheumatologist, prescribe her hydroxychloroquine, but not give her the lupus diagnosis. And so I asked her, why are you going to take a medication if you don't have a diagnosis? So you need to ask him, why am I taking this medication? What is it that I have, or what is it that you think I have? What is my diagnosis? So I know what I'm doing and how to live my life from here on out. And so he finally told her, yes, you have lupus. And that meant a lot to me, because I get involved and give you the questions and equip you with what you need to, need to have, and the knowledge that you need to have so you can ask those questions. So being involved in a clinical research study was something that I would never regret, something that I would never take back. If I could participate in another one, I would, but because I run it at my site, I can't. But like right now, they're trying to, I don't know if you guys know, they have a new drug. There is only 2 biologics, and I don't know if you guys know what a biologic is, but a biologic is a substance that you infuse or you inject into your system to help treat your disease. And so there are only 2 official biologics that treat lupus, and that is Benlysta and Safanella. Safanella has been approved for less than a year. Benlysta has been approved since 2000, I think, in 11. They also have moved from being just IV infusion to being sub-Q injection. Safanella is an infusion. They're trying to get it approved for an injection. And now they're working on having Safanella approved for lupus nephritis. So my site is going to be a site to test out Safanella for lupus nephritis. Again, I can't, not every state, not every city has clinical trials, but you'll be surprised how more often there are sites than you know of. It just depends on how that site advertises what they do. Like, for instance, when I'm on the radio, I talk about being involved in clinical trials. Like right now, I'm talking to you guys about being involved in clinical trials. But when I'm on the radio, I can't be trial specific. So I can't say Safanella, I can't say Benlysta, I can't mention the drug company, but I can talk about the benefits of being involved in clinical trials. And not everybody qualifies for being involved in clinical trials either. So I can talk about that, qualifications, not be protocol. When I say protocol specific, we get, when we start a trial, we get a big manual on how to run that trial and the rules and regulations and what the criteria is to meet to be able to be a participant in a study. So there's a lot of behind the scenes to it. It's not that easy. There are FDA regulations. At any time, can I be audited and inspected by the FDA? So it's a fine line when you participate. But like for my site, I do talk about involvement in clinical trials on the radio. We put up posters. Sometimes the trial itself will provide marketing materials, so we can put up posters inside the doctor's office. That has to be approved by a governing board. So we can't just, hold on one second, Nicole. We can't just put up posters or marketing materials. It has to be approved by a governing board, and the sponsor or the drug company that is sponsoring that particular trial, they have to approve it first, and then they pass it on to the governing board. But then sometimes they will provide materials so we can market and promote their specific trial. Nicole had a question,
Okay.
and I'll answer questions as they come in, Chandra.
Okay.
She said, would there be a way to narrow it down with location via link? Unfortunately, no, there's not. What you can do though is there is a website called clinicaltrials.gov. And if you search lupus, which is the indication, sometimes they'll give you a list of open sites and who the sponsor is and where those sites are, what, you know, if it's in Nevada or things like that. Or you can just Google like lupus clinical trials. Sometimes they have like a recruiting company that will give you a survey. And once you complete that survey, it will auto generate to the site based on where you're located. And hold on, LaShawn is giving us the the definition of biologics, which I didn't focus on, but it's infused or injected. Sometimes there is anti-TNFs, which is not necessarily a biologic. It could be a pill. But all of those focus on reducing inflammation, pain, swelling. It also can focus on symptom specific, lupus symptom specific items, such as hair loss, mucosal ulcers, things of that nature. For instance, Cephanella is supposed to be really good for pleurisy and pericarditis, so serositis issues. So the inflammation of the tissue around your heart or the fluid around your lungs caused by lupus. So let's talk about the inclusion exclusion criteria, some of the inclusion exclusion criteria to participate in a clinical study. Our site does not take anybody under 18. But there are studies that will focus on people that are under minors with consent from their parents, but we don't, because in our general practice, we don't see minors. We don't participate in studies that you can enroll minors in, or we just opt not to enroll minors. Typically, the number one thing when you're participating in a lupus study is you have to have an ANA of greater than 1/80. And are you guys aware of your ANA titer and pattern and things of that nature? Does anybody know about that? Have you been educated about that part of it, knowing what your ANA titer and pattern is? Anybody want to raise their hand? Nobody?
For those of us that don't know, can you explain the actual levels when you get your levels back and it says ANA? What does that actually mean for those of us that don't know?
ANA is your anti-nuclear antibody panel. And when they look at it, you want them to run it with a titer and a pattern. And the titer is like a ratio. So it's in increments of 40. So you'll see it's 1/40, 1/80, 1/120, 1/160, and so on and so forth. Typically, you can have 1 out of 3 women has a positive ANA. Doesn't necessarily mean you have an autoimmune disease. Doesn't mean you have lupus. Doesn't mean you don't. But that is rather typical for 1 out of 3 women to have a positive ANA. If you see 1/40, they'll look at that and say, "Hey, nah, that's nothing to be worried about." Even if you see 1/80, that's considered elevated, but not necessarily a concern. And you don't necessarily, you don't get a lupus diagnosis just based on a positive ANA. There are so many different tests that you have to run to get that lupus diagnosis. Also, they look at not only your lab work, but your symptoms, because just because your labs are elevated, that's not indicative that your lupus is active. For instance, when I got diagnosed, my symptoms weren't active, but my lab work was off the chart. When I started the diagnosis process in 2009, my symptoms were very active, but my lab work fluctuates. So you guys need to understand that Nicole, I don't know what you're saying as far as inflammatory markers. There is a bunch of different tests. There is from dsDNA to anti-nuclear antibody to your complement levels, to your regular lab work, to your SED rate, knowing if you're inflamed. You'd be surprised how many different tests they have to diagnose you. But again, a good rheumatologist is not going to just look at your tests. They're going to look at your symptoms as well. What I was saying was in 2009, when I started the process, my symptoms were, I'm passing out, I'm in the hospital, I'm losing my hair, I got these sores in my mouth I don't know anything about. But my markers, my biomarkers were not showing that I had lupus because it fluctuates. And when you have a treatment, and I've seen this being involved in clinical studies where, and we run double blind studies. Let me go back. If a double blind study is you are either on actual treatment that they're testing or you're on placebo. Placebo is sugar water. We don't know what you're on until the study is completely over. Not your study participation, but the study has completely ran its course. Everybody that participated, so if they had a goal of 30 people in the study and all 30 people have finished all of their visits, they have closed out the study, they have presented it to the FDA, it could take years before we find out if you're actually on drug. But depending on how active your lupus is, we can kind of tell, because this is what we've been doing for a while. We can kind of tell if you're on drug or not, because then maybe your symptoms have minimized. Maybe your flares are not as frequent. So we can see that you're on drug. And sometimes if you're on drug, it will cause your blood levels and your biomarkers to start to digress. And so it fluctuates. And you may not be positive. I've seen people who've come in with very high numbers at the beginning of the study, and at the end of their study participation, their numbers have minimized and have regulated. And I won't say that they're in remission, but their symptoms have decreased. Their flares have become less frequent. They have more energy, they're doing more things. So it just depends. And again, not everybody is the same. And so some of the criteria, again, are you have to have an ANA of higher than 1/80 to participate. Sometimes you have to have a historical anti-double-stranded dsDNA that shows that you at some point you have had elevated dsDNA levels, and it has to be in your chart. You can't have had cancer. The only cancer that you could have had to participate in clinical trials is cervical cancers, things that can be removed and may not return. So they do allow that. You cannot have certain heart problems, or you couldn't have a stroke, or you can't be on certain medication. It's a lot to it. So it's not just, oh, I want to participate in a clinical research study, I got lupus, let me go ahead and do it. And it breaks my heart sometimes because I've seen the sickest of the people because their symptoms have been very active, but their numbers, their blood work doesn't meet that. And I've had to deny them for clinical studies. So it hurts. Or if you if you're on depression medication and they think that you're suicidal, if you have suicidal ideations, because I have to ask you, hey, have you ever thought of killing yourself? Or have you made any attempts? And if the answer to those questions are yes, you can't participate in those studies. So there's a lot of behind the scenes parts. When I bring you in for an appointment, I have a document where I have to collect your medical history, your medication, ask you those questions. There is a document called the Selena Sled-Eye form. It's an assessment. So it's a list of common lupus symptoms that they have narrowed down by the ACR criteria, which is the rheumatology board. So they have narrowed down some common symptoms, like if you had mucosal ulcers, which is the mouth sores, if you had alopecia, if you had arthritis, if you had digital infarcts or nodules on your fingers, things like that. So you have to have a certain score. And if you don't meet that score without your blood work, you can't qualify for the study. Do they do a full, hold on one second, LaShawn. Yes, they do the PHQ is not an exclusive criteria. The PHQ is an assessment. But I can tell you that there are some studies that if you have to do a PHQ form, and what a PHQ form is it's an extensive list of questions that ask you, like, do you feel like you have to adjust your schedule because of your lupus? Are you depressed because of your lupus? Have you lost your appetite? It's just a bunch of different questions asked in a bunch of different ways to try to trip you up, I think. And if you answer them certain ways, it scores you. And if your score is too high, then it'll automatically disqualify you for the study. One particular question has to do with if you feel depressed, I think, and suicidal. And if you answer that yes, it automatically disqualifies you. That's if the PHQ form is required before your participation is approved. Oftentimes with lupus, you don't do that PHQ form until you're approved to be in a study. And now what they're doing is, and there's several different forms. It's not just the PHQ form. There's the quality of life form that asks you, like how many steps you can take without being exhausted. Are you still working a full-time job? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? So that asks about your activity level. There's also like a fatigue scale. There's so many different assessments that participants have to complete to be in a trial. There's also assessments that the doctors have to complete to be in a trial. There's the Selena Sled-Eye. There is the BILAG. There is the flare index. There's the PGA, which the PGA is the Physician's Global Assessment, and it rates from 0 to 100. And it basically is rating like your pain and joint involvement. And so if you're over in your activity, basically your lupus activity. So if you have pain and joint involvement, you had kidney functions, it rates you from 0 to 100 on a scale of 0 to 100 to see where you're at as far as the doctor feels that you're at as far as lupus is concerned, your lupus activity. There are also certain criteria, like I had a study where if your lymphocyte count or your white blood cell count dropped too low, we had to repeat it. And if it continuously dropped low and stayed that way, then you had to be withdrawn from the study. So there not only is there criteria to meet to get in the study, but there's also criteria to meet to stay in the study. And once you are removed from a study, if it has to do with adverse events, which is something like your white blood count decreased drastically, or even COVID is an adverse event, we have to report all that. Everything that you see on a bottle, like for instance, Tylenol, if you look at Tylenol, it says may cause death. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to die from taking Tylenol, but somebody died while taking Tylenol. So they had to report that. But it doesn't mean that Tylenol was the absolute end all to why you passed away. Being involved in a clinical study, you provide all of those things on that bottle. May cause death, need to take with milk, do not drive while taking, things like that. People that participate in clinical studies, they provide that information. So again, I just think I think it's an awesome thing to participate in.
Okay. Yeah, that's you answered actually some of the questions that we had for you. So we appreciate you giving the information while the discussion was going on. I know one of the questions I had was with you working in that type of atmosphere and seeing how it can go, whether good or bad, would you advise someone to do it? And you said that you would, correct? You would.
Absolutely. I will, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I say this, so I'm just gonna say it. That's how I met Brianna.
Okay.
That's
Yes.
how I met Tamika. That's how I met Jade. All of my closest friends and now sisters are participants in my clinical research study, and they have been with me for years. They didn't just participate in one. Brianna is on her, well, she left me, she moved to Atlanta. But she was on her third clinical research study, and I'm pretty sure that she can share, if she would like to, her participation in being a clinical research participant.
Sure. Can y'all hear
We
me?
would love that. Yes.
Okay. I got my camera off because I got COVID right now, so I'm looking crazy. But yes, that's how Autumn and I met. I met her when I first got diagnosed with lupus in 2014, and she introduced me to the trials, and I was so blessed that she did, because for one, in Vegas they don't have a lot of specialists there, and the ones they do have, it takes a long time to see them. So with me being in this clinical trial, it allowed me to see a rheumatologist and be with specialists a lot faster and more accessible than anyone else would have. And I was able to learn a lot about my body and just lupus, period. I had no idea what lupus was, what it did, what was going on. Like her, I was just passing out, having seizures, the ambulance stayed at work, passing out all the time. People already knew to be on standby if I passed out. And going to these clinical trials, it allowed me to then jump into medical terms and just studying it myself and getting to know my body better with lupus. So I always tell people as well too to join a trial, because I didn't even know how they did trials for medicine, period. I understood how they came up with the side effects of medicine, but being in the trials and how we did them, like she did say, we did have a lot of packets, questionnaires that were asked to make sure that you could do the trial. And seeing how it affected you. So, and also on the other end, being in the trial, it made me feel like I was doing something to help other people as well too, because I'm testing this medicine out that could possibly help thousands and millions of people. So it made me feel like I was doing something with the fight towards lupus as well too.
And let me just say this, I'm going to give the disclaimer. Not all sites are like my site. When you join a trial at my site, you are, like Brianna said, you are very accessible. You have a lot of access to the staff. Like, we tell our participants that they are VIPs. So you'd be surprised how many times I get calls at 11 o'clock at night or on the weekends or things like that, or text messages. They have direct access to the doctor, basically, because they text me like I'm going to the hospital, or this is happening, and I text the doctor, he texts me right back, and I give them a response. Their appointments, like where I work, Dr. Kelly runs a regular practice, and we run clinical trials. So it's faster. Like his waiting list, he's booking right now for February of 2023 for a new appointment. Where if you get involved in clinical trials, I can see you Tuesday. I don't run my schedule around the same schedule he has in his office, if that makes sense. And you get to ask questions as far as, I went to this doctor, they said this, what about this? I need my medication refilled. They call me, they text me, hey, hun, I know it's Saturday, but I need to make sure you do this for me on Monday. So they have, access to me and access to the doctor quicker, and quicker appointments. If you go to a specific hospital, which is down the street from our office, and you tell me you're in the hospital, Dr. Kelly is going to be there. The one thing that I am elated about is when Brianna came to me, Brianna was having seizures quite frequently. Brianna was in the hospital quite frequently. Since Brianna has been with me in clinical studies, it's been years since she's had a seizure, thank God. It's been years since she's been in the hospital. So that is a win for us in the column of clinical research.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And that's really good to hear. So the success stories, when they come along, is definitely great to have those put out there, because I know a lot of people are weary of doing clinical trials just from, as you stated, maybe being a lab rat or someone whose symptoms is they're scared because they're like, oh, I have lupus already and I'm afraid of it getting worse, because we always fear of the worst part. So if I do a clinical trial, will it get worse or will it be beneficial? So it's also, it's really good to hear the success stories. So thank you for that, Brianna.
And I want to ask this. So when you guys got diagnosed with lupus, how many of your rheumatologists defined what lupus was, or did they just give you a diagnosis and want you to figure it out on your own? Can anybody speak up on that particular thing, on that question?
I can speak on it real quick. It's LaShawn. When I was diagnosed, my doctor gave a brief discussion on what lupus was, basically that it was autoimmune. I didn't get much more information than that initially. So I knew I had to kind of do my homework and do some research for myself.
Yeah, and that was Nicole said, the doctor said her body was attacking itself, and it absolutely is. Like when I got my diagnosis, I wasn't told that lupus could be fatal. I wasn't given any real description of what lupus is. And my aunt has lived with lupus for over 30 years. And I know more about lupus than she does. Like she comes to me for, resources. But the reason why I asked that question is because there have been, like Brianna, when she came to me, she was newly diagnosed with lupus, and she didn't quite, she didn't understand it. And so in clinical trials, we give you more of a definition, more of what to expect, and we break down your symptoms, because I'm gonna tell you, when I started getting them sores in my mouth, I almost hung my husband out to dry. You hear me? Like, I didn't know what that was. Nobody told me that you get sores in your mouth, your nose, your ears, your head. And so I didn't know what to expect. So we go through those different things, and it makes me warm and fuzzy inside when I'm able to explain different things. Like, how many of you guys know that women with lupus should not take estrogen-based medication? Like, your birth controls should not be estrogen-based. Your hormones, if you're in menopause, should not be estrogen-based. Estrogen causes you to flare. So, and I didn't know that. I had a patient on birth control, just got put on birth control. She told me what her birth control was. And so when Dr. Kelly came in the office and I told him what had changed, it's like, she can't be on that. And then there comes that VIP service. Autumn, you gotta get on the phone, you gotta call her gynecologist, you got to tell them that she has lupus, she can't be on estrogen-based products, and find her a different birth control.
That is good to hear. I did not know that regarding the estrogen. So thank you for sharing that information with us. I myself am going through some menopausal stuff at this time, and they keep trying to put me on something. And I'm like, I don't want to take another med. I don't want to take another med. I'll just deal with all these symptoms. But for some reason, once I turned 50, it has gotten so much worse. And I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I got to take something. So thank you for sharing that information.
No problem. I had a hysterectomy in 2001, but I still have my ovaries and my tubes, and then they went back in and took them in 2017 and 18. And my gynecologist asked me too, like, what hormones are you going on? And Dr. Kelly was like, none. So I haven't been on any hormone medication, not even progesterone base. I haven't even been on that since 2018. So I'm just going through the life of being on menopause, in menopause at 45.
Okay.
Somebody wrote something in the chat. Nicole said the same thing. She's not on anything either.
Speaking of the menopause, do you think that some of us go through it early because of the lupus? Because I know I started when I was in my 40s, and everybody was like, wait, what? But I hear a lot of people with lupus. I know it's a question, a broad question, but
you know what? I can't answer that question. I will say this: a lot of people blame everything on lupus. Once you have lupus, they blame everything on lupus. And I'm gonna tell you guys, not everything is lupus. You could just be going through early menopause because you're going through early menopause. It doesn't necessarily have to be lupus related. I've never heard anybody tell me that, Chandra. I know that for me, the gynecologist did tell me I started my period when I was 10 years old. So he told me because I started early, as far as starting my period, I could possibly start menopause early as well. So I guess it's just whatever your body is going through at the time. I have known there was a young lady that she has rheumatoid arthritis, and she's a patient in our office. But she had some female problems when she was younger, 9, 10, 11 years old. And by 18, she was in menopause. Somebody
Okay.
says who is that? Dion says she has been having symptoms since she was 21 and they're constant.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to ask you this, going back to the clinical trials. If you qualify, how often, I know Brianna said that she's done at least 3 of them, but how often, like, do they run? And if you're able to, are you able to keep doing them back to back, or is it a time lapse where you have to wait?
There is a time lapse. It depends on the protocol. So it depends on the indication. When I say indication, I mean the disease. Like, for instance, rheumatoid arthritis, there's so many different treatments approved for rheumatoid arthritis. So they kind of run their course. So we get a rheumatoid arthritis study maybe once every 2 years. Lupus is, I mean, like, right now, lupus is booming. So I have, and this is just at my site, I have 6 different studies that I'm enrolling for, just for lupus alone. But you have to, once you finish one study, they'll tell you you may have to wait anywhere from 90 days to 5 half-lives, which is whichever is greater, that's what you have to wait. So typically, the first milestone to wait, the first time lapse to wait is 30 days, which is the FDA guideline. You can't get out of one study and participate in another study next week. You have to, the FDA says you have to wait 30 days. Then the protocol may call for you to wait 90 days from the last day of your last treatment in that study. So you have to look at it. Either it could be 90 days from the last treatment day, or it could be 90 days from your end of study visit. So you have to look at things like that. So it just depends on the protocol. But yes, you can, we call them, my boss calls them drug study junkies. Once you get in
Okay.
one study, you just keep on going and going and going and going until it runs its course. Or
Okay.
until, like, I have a patient that she was in her second study, and in the middle of her second study, her lymph nodes started growing and getting bigger and bigger. And another part of she didn't report it right away, because of course we're wearing masks, and you can't see where her face was swollen. But another part of our VIP service, like, she reported, the lymph nodes getting bigger. We had her take off her mask. They were sore. And then we sent her for, ultrasounds and biopsies, and found out she had throat cancer. And we helped with that process.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
that right there, that ended her participation in clinical studies, because now she had throat cancer. She's been treated. She can't participate in a clinical study anymore.
Okay. It helps out in so many ways. And with these diagnoses, like you say, sometimes you can't see your doctor for 3 or 6 months sometimes. So to be able to do the trials, they're seeing you more often. So when something else arises, or if anything arises, you guys are able to take a look at it
We're able to
more
jump right on it.
frequent.
Yep, we're able
Yeah.
to jump right on it. And
Yeah.
that comes with the blood work too, because when you have an infection or things like that, your blood work starts to change. So if, for instance, when my kidney started to fail back in May, had I been in a clinical trial, seeing the doctor once a month or every 2 weeks, because we have one study that's every 2 weeks, they would have caught that. They would have caught my kidney functions elevating, or going haywire, and I probably wouldn't have been in the hospital.
Okay. Okay. Would you be able to do a study outside of your job? I know you said that you can't do one at that location, but if there was another one in Las Vegas, would you be able to participate, or are you can't
I
do it
would.
because?
I can go to it. I could go to a different site as long as my team is not overseeing my care. Like I can't oversee my own care. I'm the lead coordinator on lupus trials. I can't oversee my own care. So if there was a different location, unfortunately, we have a shortage of rheumatologists here in Las Vegas. And there was one that was participating. He was doing clinical trials, but then he retired. So right now there's no other site. I did try to participate in a trial on the nephrology side. So that was good. So they're monitoring me to participate, and I might be able to be a candidate for that.
Okay, okay. Tell me this. I'm only familiar with doing one clinical trial throughout my journey, and it was for calcitriol. I wasn't able to complete it, but I do know they offer compensation. With me not being real familiar with clinical trials, is that something that they always offer? Is there compensation with doing clinical trials?
Yes. I'm not supposed to tell you you get paid to be in a clinical trial, but you do. They say it's a reimbursement, or they call it a stipend. And it depends on the site. For us, we opt to pay our participants cash, and it just depends. Each trial is different. It depends on what the budget per patient is. My patients get anywhere from, I think the most was $160. They get anywhere from $40 to $160, depending on what they have to go through. So for one particular study, they had to see different specialists. So they had to see an ophthalmologist and a cardiologist, and they did a pulmonary function test in my office, and they did EKGs. And the day that they got their first treatment, I think they were in there, 8 hours, Brianna? So they got paid $160, and we pay them in cash. Some sites opt to give you a debit card, and they load the debit card if that's an option. Then some sites will give you a gift card at the end of your study, but we pay per visit. Like at the end of each visit, I give you cash.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's some more incentive for people to get on board
It,
with clinical
it is,
trials.
and for us, like some people, some sites will make you fill out a W-9 form, but we don't make you fill out any forms for your compensation. So it's under the table pretty much.
Okay, okay. You were talking about the placebos, and you mentioned that you guys don't know until afterwards, but you can sometimes tell during the process if they are taking it or not, or if they're taking the real drug.
Mhm.
At the end, when you guys do find out, with you being in that business, how often do they actually give you the medication, and how many people are often taking the placebo?
So it's supposed to be basically they tell you it's 50-50, but I don't think so. Like I have a study right now. I have 9 patients in the study. I think 8 of them are on drug and 1 of them is not. So it just depends. And that's something that they determine too when they're writing the protocol. They determine what percentage is going to be on drug and what percentage is going to be on placebo. And they may say it's 75-25, 50-50, whatever the case may be, but they determine exactly how many people are going to be on placebo and how many people are going to be on drug. They also
Okay.
determine how many participants they want. When you apply to run a drug study, in your application, you gotta put what the percentage is of people that's gonna be actually on investigational product or on placebo, you gotta say how many people you're gonna enroll. And if you change that, because they're like the Benlista study, they wanted 500 people in that study. Their enrollment, they started in 2013, and by 2017, they hadn't even met that 500 mark yet. So then they had to apply to change the amount of people. So then they took it from 500 to 350, but they had to get approval from the governing board again and the FDA to change those numbers. Anytime you change the protocol, you have to go back and get approval to make any changes, be it from the number of people you're enrolling to changing a word from and to at.
Okay, okay. Do you guys have any more questions for Ms. Autumn today regarding clinical trials? I'm scrolling back and I see something here.
What I will tell you is I encourage you to ask your rheumatologist, because sometimes they'll know about different sites that have clinical trials. And you can always ask them, do you know of anywhere here in Atlanta, St. Louis, wherever, that I can participate in a clinical trial? And they may give you the information, they may not, because oftentimes what happens is, for instance, Brianna was seeing a different rheumatologist when she became a patient in the clinical trials. And I always tell them, why go to 2 different rheumatologists? They're going to give you 2 different, different diagnoses, different information. If you don't have to see that other rheumatologist, don't. The only thing that, like, for us, if Dr. Kelly doesn't take your insurance, he won't write you pain medicine, but he'll tell you go see a pain management doctor. But if it is lupus related, if it's a lupus drug or treatment that he can prescribe you, he's going to do so. So why make it harder on yourself to continue to see 2 rheumatologists at a time?
That was going to be another question. If someone was, say, traveling and there was a possible clinical trial that they could participate in, do you have to live in that area in that state to participate in a clinical trial?
No, you just have to be willing to adhere to their visit schedule. So I have, I had 2 patients that lived up north. And when I say up north, I'm talking about Reno, Nevada. And just because we're in Nevada don't mean we're close to each other. That literally is an 8-hour drive. And so they traveled down, once a month or once every other. They were in a study that they saw me every 8 weeks. And so they would travel down every 8 weeks to see me and got compensated. Sometimes the study will compensate you more if you're traveling from out of state. They even have the ability to pay for your hotel room and things like that. And you just got to ask.
Okay, that's some great information. I'm glad that you were able to update us on a lot of information that most of us wasn't privy to. So we appreciate that. Are there any more questions or any comments or suggestions or anything that you guys would like to bring up while we have her on the line? Because she is a ball of information with the clinical trials. And then not only clinical trials, but with her working with lupus during the clinical trials. So there is a lot of information out there for you that she can give you if you guys have any more questions. And you can always reach out to her. She is easily accessible. If
I don't know
something
about
comes to
easily
mind.
accessible, but I'm not always easily accessible, but I am accessible. And if I don't get to you right then and there, I will get back to you, only because I do, I typically am the high enrolling site for all clinical trials that I have participated, that our site runs and manages. So what that means is I have the most participants involved in clinical trials, all around, no matter what it is. So I do have, I do have a job. I do have lupus, and I think that's one thing that sometimes is hard for me, because I am that ball of information. I am that VIP service if you're one of my participants. But I got to get people to understand, sometimes I have lupus too. So I do get sick. And right now, this has been the sickest I have ever been with this disease. I've been in a flare since March 27th. I have experienced some things I've never experienced with this disease. So when I tell you that it is a mystery, it truly, truly is a mystery. And just because you may have been living with lupus for like 20 years and you haven't experienced kidney issues, doesn't mean you can't experience kidney issues. I've been living with lupus for almost 10 years, and everything I put in my mouth, I throw up because there's something going on with my esophagus, and that's new to me. So just understand, when you are relying on other people to be your support system or to be your dictionary or your knowledge, that they live with this disease too. And so you got to be very understanding of that.
This is true. This is true. Thank you for sharing that with us, Madam President. We know that your journey has been long, and we know that your journey has been quite quite hard these past few months.
It
And we want
has.
you to know that we admire your courage, that you continue to move forward and, deal with it with the strength that you have. So we see you. And we do want to acknowledge that we admire that. And it gives us strength as well, because we know how lupus can break you down. And it
Man,
is a day to day. It's day to day.
It's crazy that you said that, Chandra. So I did want to touch on that. And this is besides the whole clinical trials. When they say check on your strong friends too. LaShawn said that, I believe it was LaShawn that said that she apologized for not having on her camera because she was flaring. And LaShawn and I are the same, I guess I should say. So we're just on two different ends of the spectrum. We're on two different parts of the United States. She in the Midwest and me on the West Coast. But our journey and our work in the lupus community is the same. When I tell you she goes hard for Illinois, she goes hard. And I try to do the same in Nevada. But when I say all this to say, we tend to be the strong friends. You understand what I'm saying? And so we get sick too. So every once in a while, check on your strong friends too, because you don't know what it is that we're going through. This last couple months for me has been like, I'm always the one that tries to be the one that encourages people and tries to be the one that gives people the knowledge and rah 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 and push. And this time, like, I was in my woe is me. And I want you guys to know that it's okay not to be okay. It doesn't make you any less than a person. It doesn't make you any less stronger. It doesn't make you any less supportive. It makes you a human being. And it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know so many of us struggle with that. We want to show that we're warriors and that we're fighting and, oh, we got this with this lupus thing. But
and I apologize all the time. Like, I was having a conversation with a soror yesterday. She texted me trying to get on my calendar because sometimes I'm not accessible. And I'm like, I got COVID and I'm sorry, just give me a second. And she's like, it's okay. You got to take care of you. And sometimes I gotta remember, I gotta take care of me. So it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to push. It's okay to stay in the bed. I try not to wallow in it, and not give my, not go past a certain amount of days that I'm in the bed, but it's okay. And know that it's okay. And if I'm not the person that you can depend on that day, there might be somebody else that you can depend on, another stronger person that you can depend on. But I need you guys to know that if you're not doing okay, it's okay not to be okay.
This is true. This is true. And that's where the sorority comes in. There are so many of us that are available. And if you know anybody who is dealing with lupus or a family member that is dealing with lupus, by all means, reach out to anyone in our sorority. And even if it's just for a listening ear, to release it, because lupus is very hard. And I know people see us as, oh, you see us on social media laughing and joking and all of that, but it is a minute to minute, hour to hour disease. It is every day. And believe it or not, I've come to find that a lot of us put on this, oh, I'm okay. And then you see us off camera and we laying in bed like, oh God, I'm glad that's over because I just need to rest. And it isn't just the, oh, I'm tired, let me get some rest and let me sleep for 8 hours. You got to get up and do it all over again the next day. You've had 12 spoons today. Tomorrow you might have 6. And Lord forbid you want to try and have a somewhat normal life and do something that normal people do, and you'll end up paying for it. So unfortunately, that is our life living with lupus.
Right? Because I just went on vacation and Paula said, what's normal? We don't have
Right.
I went on vacation and I was in Mexico for 6 days, and I don't hang out like that. Like I don't hang out to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's what I was doing. I was living what they say, I was living my best life. And on that last day, Monday, before I came home, I flew home on Tuesday, but on Monday, I went to breakfast with my friends. I went to lunch with my friends, and that was it. The rest of the day, I stayed in my room, and I was upset that I couldn't stream BET Plus from my iPad, but I was able to stream Stars and watch some TV shows, and I just stayed in my room because the whole time I was there, I swear I looked like Sherman Clump. My feet were from ankle, I'm from toe to kneecap. My legs were just swollen, and it was difficult for me to walk. I had to be pushed off to the airport in a wheelchair. It just you just never know. It's 1 minute you're okay, and the next minute not so much.
And just something as simple as trying to have a day where you're enjoying yourself and enjoying your friends,
Right.
it can happen. So you guys, please, for those of you that don't have lupus and that are joining us today, please, please, please get more knowledge. And that's another reason why we do these every month, because our journey is so intricate and our days are just so intense. We may not always show it. Sometimes it shows on our face, but lupus is really hard. But everybody has a hard life, but it's hard, but we get through. It's around this time where I usually ask if you want to promote yourself, or if you would like to tell people where they can find you on social media, or tell us about your business, Crafty 7 Creations. So,
well, it's funny because I have multiple businesses. I don't just have Crafty 7. We also run 7 days training. So that's my husband's business that I help him manage. He is a basketball trainer. So he has a basketball training company. I have 2 sons that play professional basketball overseas. So we manage their careers and their life. The Crafty 7 is I make t-shirts, cups, I do party planning. I am a jack of all trades when it comes to that. So I make backdrops and things like that. I am going to be starting in September. Well, in August, I'm going to be taking more classes so I can become, dive more into the sublimation world. You guys are in my office. So you see the heat presses and things like that. But I will be diving more into the sublimation world. So sublimation is where the image is directly printed on the garment instead of you doing vinyl or I forgot the other method, but brain fog. That's what I have. But anyway, so I will be diving more into that come September. So be on the lookout for those products. But I stay quite busy. It's hard for me because these last, like I haven't been, thank you, Miranda, screen print. I haven't been as busy with my Crafty 7 business. Like I make tutus and things like that. But this has been the longest I have been in my office in a very long time. My family wouldn't let me get up because I couldn't, with my lupus, I'm having lung issues, I'm having respiratory issues. And so I couldn't walk 10 steps without being without a breath. I couldn't get up my stairs. I needed somebody to walk behind me. So I haven't been doing as much with my business as I would like, but I will be back doing things in minimization, but back, I'm slowly but surely getting back to where I need to with everything. So, I got to make sure that the sorority is running. I got to make sure that Colors of Lupus is running. I got to make sure that we're visible in the lupus community. And I can't do that without the help of my sisters. Chandra has taken this advocacy and education committee to a whole new level with doing educational events once a month, educational sessions once a month, and just doing, she does our newsletter. She is helping us partner with our friend LaRonda and her travel company. And so I can't do this without my sisters. And for those that are on here that are not involved in the sorority, if you want to get to know more about the sorority, we have different meet and greets. Like we had a meet and greet at 11 o'clock today for people that are in our interest group that want to know and actually want to be a part of the sorority and make a difference in the lupus community.
Yes, get to know about us. Get to know about Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated. You can find us on our homepage, GPRSororityInc.org, and we're on social media platforms. We have a interest group, which she was speaking of today. We have an upcoming class that's starting in the fall, and if you're interested, we have applications that are available. And they are due by the 26th of August, I believe. But as I was saying earlier, you don't have to just reach out to join us. There are plenty of women in the sorority who you can just talk to. Like I say, lupus is really hard. And sometimes you just need a friend. Sometimes you don't need the answers. Sometimes you just need to let someone hear you speak and express how you feel. And as far as knowing someone, we have a Dimes and Seal auxiliary that's available. The Dimes is for younger women who are under the age of I'm sorry, guys. I'm missing my mark. Thank you. Under the age of 18, and then the sororities for people over women over the age of 18. But even more so, like I say, if you lost someone who has lupus and you want to become a part, we have all types of mentoring programs and everything. So just take a look and check us out, because we are in the lupus community and we are a force to be reckoned with. So get to know Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated. And we also have some things coming up. I'm not sure if you guys know, but in September, we will be celebrating our second annual Founders Day in Las Vegas. So we will be
Woohoo!
there from the 16th to the 19th. So if you are in the area or if you can get to us, we will show you how we light up Las Vegas purple and get to know us, the glamorous women of Gamma Pi Rho. And also she spoke on a upcoming trip that we have. We will be venturing out to Punta Cana in May of next year, and it's an all-inclusive trip. We have a lot more information for you. There is a Lupus Warrior support group, Travel Warrior support group that you can join on Facebook for more information. Miss LaRonda is on here as well. Miss LaRonda, if you'd like to speak about anything about the upcoming trip, you can. But we have plenty of information out there. So like I say, check us out on the webpage or contact any of us. And,
And
you
Colors of
know,
Lupus too, just because it's in Nevada doesn't mean that you can't be involved in Colors of Lupus activities. We will be bringing back our support groups, our quarterly support groups, starting in September. I'm sorry, October, and then they'll run every quarter. We do, you know, the Lupus Walk that we also offer a virtual component to that. We're trying to put together a gala and fashion show. So there are so many different things that you can be involved in that we provide tools for. So please jump in and get involved and get to know lupus so we can say no lupus.
absolutely, absolutely. We need to bring so much awareness to this disease. We have such a long way to go, but we have come so very far. Madam President, we want to thank you for joining us today and being a part of our group session. Thank you for all the information on clinical
Welcome.
trials. Very informative. We know your schedule, so thank you so much again for taking time out for us on this platform and not behind the scenes. So we want you to rest. We want everyone to have a great rest of their weekend. And again, you can always find us. Reach out to Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated for all things lupus, all things sorority, all things being great in life. We
All
have so
things
many.
purple.
All things purple. We have so many positive women that are just not lupus warriors. Like I say, they work, they're entrepreneurs, you know, they have a lot going on. So if
Going to school to be
anything,
doctors.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have women that are in school and not just getting one degree, but they are advancing even further. So if anything, we are definitely inspiring, and lupus does not have to have your life with just a diagnosis. So you can become more than what you ever thought you can be. And just keep being inspired, everyone. And again, thank everyone for joining us today. I see a lot of familiar faces. We have sorority members on here, and we have family members. So, you know, Saturdays is Saturdays, but we do want to acknowledge and thank you guys for joining in and being so supportive. So at this time, we will say bye. Thank you for
Bye.
joining
Thank you.
us. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I forgot to take a picture. Hold on. Hold on. If you don't mind, you guys, I will take a photo. So if you're on camera, 1, 2, 3, smile. Hey, Dion.
Hey, dear.
Okay, smile. All right, one moment. I'm gonna go to the next screen and smile. All right, I'm gonna go to the next screen and smile. All right, guys, have a safe weekend. Try not to do too much, and love you all.
Have a great day.
You too, you too. Bye. Bye, Sora Nicole. Bye, everyone in the chat. Sorry I didn't get a chance to answer most questions, but Madam President held it down as always.
Thank
As
you.
always. You're
Thank you,
welcome.
sis.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Gamma Pi Rho Lupus Sorority Incorporated. Bye.